Good to see you all again. So for those of you who haven't met me before, my name is James Pell. I am from the BMA's East Midlands regional team. So I met a few of you a couple of weeks ago. We've had some conversations around exception reporting, and there was a bit of feedback from some of you about the fact that you guys kind of know what exception reporting is, but just need a bit of a reminder about when you should be doing it, how you do it, and what the kind of process is, and also why it is a really important thing to do, both for you, for your colleagues, and for the trust as well. So before Sandy takes you through a longer presentation than mine to hype you up, I'm just going to give you a bit of a run through about exactly what exception reporting is, what it's designed to do, and basically just make sure you guys know exactly the different scenarios in which you should be exception reporting. So just as a show of hands, just as a start, before I start, how many of you would say you are confident with exception reporting? Well, hopefully we'll fix that. Hopefully we'll sort that out. So I'll take you through what we have slides on. So normally we do this as part of a presentation around your contracts as well, but because exception reporting was particularly what came up, wanted to focus on exception reporting. So despite anything you might hear in terms of negative views about exception reporting, it is not a complaint. It is highlighting a mismatch, and I will go through the different mismatches that can happen, whether it's to do with your working pattern, whether it's to do with accessing education, or whether it's a mismatch in terms of the levels of staffing that have been promised on the ward that you're working on. Exception reporting is about raising concerns when those matches are not met, basically. The BMA use exception reports to achieve a lot of change. Who's anyone on? That could be Boston. I thought it was me. I thought it was my. Thought that was my chest. Where was I? Yes. So one, exception reporting can be really, really useful for you as an individual, whether it's about getting money back for hours that you spent over your shift patterns, but also about holding the trust accountable for any kind of mismatches that are made for you guys. The BMA also use it as evidence to address staffing levels, adjust rotas, and basically make sure that your experience in a particular ward on a particular department is improved when it comes to staffing levels and the amount of work that you're doing. You don't have to make a claim about money if you don't want to. So do not feel pressurized if you think, oh, I'm causing a bit of a fuss by running an exception report. You don't have to claim money back if you don't want to. I would recommend that you do, because I mean, from a trade union point of view, if you're doing work, please don't do it for free, would be my explanation for that. But if it doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to. And it is in your contract to exception report. So the exception reporting was brought in and negotiated by the BMA in the 2016 resident doctors contract. You are obliged to do it, even if it can seem like a bit of a hassle, even though if it can seem like you're not necessarily sure how it is benefiting you and your colleagues, but it is part of your contractual rights. So we really would want to really implore on you to do it. The more of you that do it, the better. Because it's been in since 2016, we've kind of had a whole cohort of resident doctors go from F1 all the way through to kind of high level registrar level and into consultant level, having been introduced to exception reporting. And when it was first introduced in 2016, inevitably you meet senior trainees or consultants who would have said, well, I never got to exception report. If I work late, I work late. This is an improvement. It's about protecting you guys and giving you incentives and protections that previous colleagues didn't get. So even if you are met with those sorts of comments about, well, it is, we just got on with the job back in the day, back in our day, we just did the long hours. But did that benefit them? Not necessarily. You have the opportunity to put that right, basically. So I'm going to start by just busting a few myths. So some things you may have heard out on the wards, whether it be, I know you guys are F1 starting at Lincoln, but I cover all the East Midlands region. I've come across doctors saying these things. A lot of them are not true. So starting with the fact that it might impact negatively on my career progression if I exception report, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So the BMA's priority is making sure that you guys are given the freedom to do this. It does not have any detrimental impact on your career progression whatsoever. And the trust should be, any trust that you're working in should be encouraging you to do this. It should be introduced to you as part of your inductions, wherever it is that you work. So when you go into FY2, wherever it is that you work, it will be introduced to you there, and they should be encouraging you to do so. There's no other myth. There's no point in exception reporting. And I have genuinely heard this from doctors. Absolutely not true. It is a contractual right that has not existed for a very long time, negotiated in 2016. And as it's something that was only introduced sort of in 2016, it's something that can be taken away if you guys don't use it. So demonstrating that it is useful and that you guys get a benefit from it is a really important way of protecting your contractual right to exception report. If your employer won't provide an acceptable resolution to an exception report, tell the BMA, because that's when we get involved, and we do that on a regular basis. Myth number 3, the new safety limits on working hours make your lives worse. So, and that's in respect to the European Working Time Directive, in which you are limited to 48 hours average over the course of your rotation. You are free to opt out of that as an individual. As the BMA, we don't recommend that you do. The European Working Time Directive is a protection for you guys to make sure that you are less at risk of burnout. And obviously, despite working an average of 48-hour weeks, you guys will all know how long an individual week can still be to fit within that average of 48 hours. So the BMA is adamant, and we've always made it very clear that you guys can access all the training that is required of you in an average of 48 hours working week. So if you ever hear that that is not enough time, that the cap makes your training experience worse, no, we know that you can access all of the training that you need within that 48 hours on average. Checking your rota at the start of your rotation with the BMA is a really, really important way of doing that, to make sure that you are fitting in with that 48-hour average. If your rota is not compliant with terms and conditions, we work with you to get it changed, and that can involve getting it changed across an entire department. So if one doctor's rota isn't compliant, we need to make sure everybody's fits within those terms and conditions. We manage that entire process. So if you've not done it before, as a BMA member, make sure that you do check your rota before you start working. You should get it 8 weeks before you start. You should get your generic work schedule 8 weeks before you start, and your personalized rota 6 weeks before you start working. Check it beforehand, and if there are problems with it, then let us know, and we can work with you and work with the trust to get it fixed. My employer can charge me for exercising my right to not drive home after a night shift. Has anybody experienced this? So you've got to the end of a long shift or a night shift and felt too tired to drive home. Has anybody experienced that? Has anybody exercised the right to stay and have somewhere to sleep? Please use it. It is your right to do so. So if you come to the end of a night shift and you feel like you are too tired to drive home, I know that for a lot of trainees at Lincoln, a lot of you may live in Nottingham or Leicester or Derby, or basically a decent hour and a half's drive home. If that is the case, even if you do live locally, but you feel like you are too tired to drive home, the trust is obliged to provide you a place to sleep so you can get some rest and drive home, or they are obliged to provide you a taxi home and a taxi back again for the start of your next shift, or to come and collect your car. That is in your contract. You have the right to exercise that at any point. Because obviously we have experienced, unfortunately, I'm sure you are aware of doctors who have been in road accidents driving home from a night shift, even doctors who have unfortunately passed away as a result of being in a road traffic accident because they were simply too tired to drive home. And the BMA has done a lot of work on this. So it is in the 2019 amendments to your contract. Now, if you feel that you are too tired to drive home, then please exercise that right to get a taxi home and get a taxi back. Yes? So you speak to your clinical supervisor, and that will be raised then, so that you can then arrange the taxi back and forward. And like I say, it is a really, really important thing to do. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. You are also entitled to do it and claim it back, of course. So if there is nobody around to speak to, then by all means do it anyway. Do not feel like you have to drive home just because there's nobody there to talk to. Your safety is the most important thing at the end of the day. So just because there's nobody there to talk to, please don't. Yeah. If you can find anybody senior in the department that you're working, talk to them. But if, like I say, if you're in that position where there is just nobody around to talk to, by all means do it and claim it back. It's not a problem. You're safe as long as you're safe. That is all that matters. And it might not be that, you know, you might just be that you need a couple of hours sleep. It might not be that you have to stay here for a long period of time, or, you know, for a whole day or whatever it might be. It might just be that you feel like you just need a few hours kit before the trust is obliged to find you somewhere to sleep, adequate sleep. And that's not sitting in a chair in a light room. They have to find you somewhere to sleep. And again, talk to whoever's most senior in your department, and they should be able to advise about where to go. The last myth I get is, I've heard is, I need to get prior authorization before I submit an exception report. Absolutely not. And the BMA is doing a lot of work on this to make access to exception reporting as easy as possible. I will go into the process of how an exception report works, but no, you do not need anyone's prior authorization to file one. It is on you at the end of it. Like say, if you finish a couple of hours late at a shift, if there is a safety breach because of low staffing levels, it is your right to raise this as early as you can. And like I say, I will go through the different ways that you can do that. So these are the different scenarios in which you should be exception reporting. Now, like I say, I met a few of you a couple of weeks ago. I think you guys are aware of differences in total hour of work. So you're supposed to finish work at 5, you end up finishing work at 8, you exception report for the 3 hours that you've worked over. Now, and obviously you are entitled to therefore be paid for that. About 80% of all exception reports result in you being paid for the extra hours that you've worked. But more significantly, say if that happens, you know, we know that happens as a one-off, you know, patients get ill right at the end of your shift. But if that starts to happen as a regular occurrence on a particular day of the week or a particular time of the day, then that becomes a pattern. And that is when BMA can use that as evidence. So if you are exception reporting every Wednesday, because you're always finishing work late every Wednesday, BMA can use that as evidence to show that there is a gap in that rota and that needs filling, whether it would be by a locum or additional support, to make sure that you are not finishing late every single time. Also difference in pattern of hours worked as well, but also differences in educational opportunities. So again, I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago about this. If your F1 teaching is mandatory, it is in your rota. If you're ever in a position where you are denied the chance to come to teaching because you're too busy on the ward, simply can't get away, you should exception report that. It is your right to come to teaching. It is in your rota. You should be here, and your ward should be sufficiently staffed for you to come here every single time. If you're ever denied that opportunity, then you should exception report, okay? Also, in the differences in the support to the doctor during service commitment, so that basically is staffing levels. So if it is mandatory that there should be an F1, an F2, a reg, a senior reg and a consultant on the department, and it is not at that level, and you believe that patient safety is at risk because of that, you should exception report as well. We know that you can't do that during a shift, so I will explain in a little bit. You should raise it orally as early as you can with your clinical supervisor or whoever's most senior in the department, and then at the end of your shift, raise a formal exception report. So I believe I'm right in saying the current Guardian of Safe Working is Manish Chibani, am I right? Unless it has a... Yes. Yes. Yeah. There you go. You guys know better than me. I will feed back that our system's not up to date. Do you all know who your Guardian of Safe Working hours is? Better than me. Hopefully so. So the Guardian of Safe Working hours is literally there to provide independent judgment over and accountability to the trust when it comes to exception reports and the hours that you guys work and safe staffing levels. Every exception report is received by the Guardian of Safe Working. So if you ever think, oh, I send off my exception report, but it just disappears into the stratosphere, I have no idea who actually reads it. The Guardian of Safe Working hours reads every single one and reviews and is obliged to reply to you within a certain time period as well. They are also there to hold the trust accountable as well. So they are involved in a lot of kind of collective discussions around changing rotas, and if there are, say, a spike in number of exception reports within a particular department, the Guardian of Safe Working liaises with the trust and holds them accountable for any kind of issues. And they also report quarterly to the board and the LNC. Do you guys all know what the LNC is? Okay, so the LNC is the Local Negotiating Committee. That is a BMA run committee that is made up of locally elected doctors. So for ULH, it is all made up of doctors that work here, Boston and Grantham, and they range from consultants to SAS doctors to resident doctors, foundation trainees, IMGs as well. We try and have as big a range of doctors as possible, and they sit with the Guardian of Safe Working hours, the clinical director, the medical director, to negotiate on issues that affect you guys here at ULH. So The BMA does obviously, you know about the kind of national negotiations that we do around your pay and conditions, but about 40% of all negotiations the BMA does is on a local basis. So whether it's something to do with, and it genuinely can range from something like car parking to rota issues to unspent funds, about genuinely anything that affects just this trust. That's what the LNC is, and any BMA member can apply to become an LNC accredited rep. Literally, one of you guys can if you wanted to. But it is really important to know what the LNC do, and they should be communicating out kind of regular updates about the kind of negotiations they have. I assume, do you guys receive any kind of updates from the LNC? Because if you don't, I will feed it back. No? Okay. Not since you started, okay. It is on them to communicate out what's kind of on the agendas and what's being negotiated. I will feedback that you guys aren't necessarily receiving that. That's not a problem. So, approval process on exception reports. All exception reports relating to additional hours worked, they should be sent to the designated consultant, as well as the Guardian of Safe Working hours. As I say, a copy is sent to the Guardian of Safe Working. And then all exception reports regarding you missing teaching opportunities should go to the Director of Medical Education as well. So it is important to know that these people receive these exception reports. Every single one goes to either the Director of Medical Education or to the Guardian of Safe Working and the consultant as well. Timescales. So I know it can feel like, you guys work extremely hard, you work very long hours, and doing these exception reports can feel like a bit of a drag, and maybe you put it off. But there are timescales, especially if it comes to claiming pay, if you believe you're owed pay. So you need to make an exception report. I'll come to you and say, is that right? Within 7 days of making a claim for additional pay, or 14 days in any other event. Yeah. Okay. So that was the delay, and it wasn't actually started. Okay. So we didn't have access. Yeah. 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 Me and Tom were speaking just before this, and apparently there is a link that doesn't work, which Tom has now found. What I'm asking my colleague Wayne to do, the intranet when you guys log in, exception report, just a link there. I think of course. Yeah, even if you have the link, log in yourself, and that's what. So with it being duality, that's where you get through health medics. It's a different website. It's a different website altogether. Yeah. It's not even one with our road. Yeah, it's not even one with our road. Right. They were like, oh, it's in I was like looking everywhere. Unless now it's changed again, because obviously the book now, so I don't know if now it's the same one. It's integrated into that. I don't know if yeah. That's okay. No, this is why it's good to get this feedback. So thank you very much. So they make it as hard as possible. I mean, it's probably incompetence rather than anything more. It doesn't feel helpful. Yeah. Here it is. This is where you can get yeah. Yeah. There you go. So no. This is why it's important to have these discussions to find out what your experience has been with it. So, Tom, I'm sure you won't mind sharing that link that works. So, guys, just to catch you up on the conversations down here, Tom is going to send you the link that works this afternoon, so you all have a copy of that link, and then it's going to. The plan is to get it uploaded onto the internet, because there's currently a link on there that doesn't work. It's going to be swapped with one that does, and on PGME, the aim is to get it under E for on the A to Z, E for exception report, which isn't currently there. So yes, this is why this is useful to come in and have these conversations. where was I? Timescale. So once you've sent yours in, the trust is obliged and they have obligated to respond within a certain time period. So again, if you send in an exception report, it doesn't just disappear and they just leave it for months on end. The actioner should respond within 7 days. They should respond to the report and copy the reports to the guardian or director of medical education. If those deadlines are not met, let the BMA know, because we need to know if there are certain elements of the system that doesn't work at a particular trust. So yeah, if you are getting delays, if you've done your bit, you've sent in your exception report on time and they're not responding in the correct time periods, let the BMA know so we can get involved. Should you have a reply for it to go through? You've never had a reply for it to go through. There we go, you see. Okay, I'll talk to you at the end about that, because I need to find out exactly what that is. All right, because depends on the system. So every trust has different systems. Yeah. So yeah, really, what should be happening is if you select education, if you select education, it goes through to education. Yeah. So yeah, this is what you'll get used to as you rotate through trusts as well. You'll have just familiarized yourself with the system here, and you'll go to a new trust and they do it completely differently. So apologies for that, but that's why we like to do this, just to give you the kind of consistencies of how it works. So the outcomes. So this is what you guys and your department and the trust get out of exception reporting. So as I said earlier, time off in lieu, about 80% of all exception reports end up in pay. The other 20% ends up in time off in lieu. So if it turns out, say you've been doing exception reports, periodically, and you can evidence that you've amassed a certain number of hours, you can elect to take time off in lieu if you'd like to. Most doctors elect to take it in pay, but it's entirely up to you how you take that. Yeah. Yes. So like I say, it's the equivalent of getting pay. So yeah, if you want the time off in lieu or the pay, got to do it within 7 days. Okay. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Don't let. Yeah. Unfortunately not. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Presumably the BMA would suggest as well, like if you're in oil during
yeah.
For example, they probably want to try and take that during that same place.
Correct. Yeah. This is why most of them don't result in toil, because it's as hard to carry over as part of your contract. So as part of your contract, it's expected that you take your leave evenly between your rotations, and toil kind of works in the same way. So that's why majority ends up in pay. But like I say, there are occasions where we do get doctors who take toil. Just know that it is on the table. So if it is offered to you, then you. Mm-hmm.
One day, are you entitled to claim that back? Or
Yeah.
does it have to be a regular?
You can claim it back as a one-off. So sometimes one-offs happen. Absolutely, exception report. What I'm saying is, don't let it become a pattern before you start doing the exception reports, because of this deadline of 7 days. If you work for a month and then notice, oh, hang on, every Wednesday I'm finishing late, then you start doing it. They're going to say, well, hang on, there's no proof that this is a pattern. And that's what I will come on to, is that this is your way of evidencing whether it's a one-off or long-term patterns of you guys finishing late or starting early as well. Yeah. If you are working a time that is not in your rota, then exception report. Yeah. If you want to be panicky and do 10 minutes, that's up to you. Yeah. 6 weeks notice for toil. Generally, toil tends to be more of a negotiation. It's not like leave where you give the 6 weeks notice. It tends to be Yeah. So it tends to be a bit more of a negotiation depending on where you're at in the placement and that sort of thing. So it's not as cut and dry as annual leave, basically. Right. Just to carry on. So alternative educational opportunities. So if you miss educational opportunities, then it can be resolved by providing you with additional time to catch up and that sort of thing. Again, that can be negotiated. Fines are levied to the trust for exception report breaches. I will come on to the fines and let you know how you also benefit from the fines as well. The BMA uses exception reports as evidence to recruit additional staff, whether it be getting additional locums on a particular rota, basically making your lives more easier on a particular ward. The BMA uses these exception reports, particularly. Get it together, Sandy. Get it together. This is why I would encourage you guys to do it as a department. If you know that there is an issue within your department, encourage all of your colleagues to do the exception report. The more of you that do it, the more the BMA can use it as evidence to get things changed and improved for you. Director of Medical Education will review exception reports about education to identify further improvements to your training experience whereas required. So again, it can help to improve your training experience and also help to improve the experience of the next cohort of doctors coming through. And then the Guardian will also review exception reports to identify whether further improvements to working hours are required. So again, make sure that your contractual limits are not being breached. So it is about trying to set things up longer term that you guys do not have to experience this over and over again. So these are the situations when fines can be levied to the trust. So the Guardian, because they are independent, are allowed to levy fines to the trust. So if, for instance, your rota breaches the 48-hour average working week over the course of your rotation, if you work longer than a 13-hour shift, maximum of 72 hours in a rolling week. It used to be a rolling week. Now it's actually defined as 168 hours, just to be more precise. If you're not getting 11 hours minimum rest between resident shifts, there are loads of different scenarios in which fines can be levied to the trust. The good thing is the fines go back to you, and I will explain that in a minute. I've preempted a slide coming up. So immediate safety concerns. So I spoke to a few of you a couple of weeks ago when you've raised this issue about immediate safety concerns because there were insufficient staffing on the wards. This is the process that we recommend that you take. So orally, please do raise it immediately with the clinician responsible, whether it's the consultant, whoever's the most senior person on the ward. Raise it orally immediately or as early as you can, and then submit the exception report within 24 hours. So that has a bit more of a shorter time frame because we need to know when these safety concerns are being breached to give us, like say, sufficient time to rectify them as early as possible. What can happen is you get in response is immediate time off work and or immediate provision to support you. So whether that is trying to get in additional support as an emergency measure, whatever it may be, to try and rectify the issue as soon as possible. So I know that you guys have experienced this with insufficient staffing on wards. Please do raise it within 24 hours through an exception report, but raise it orally as early as you can with the most senior doctor on the ward. These are, I can't give you a substantial list of your current reps because it doesn't fit on the slide, but this is some of the reps that are closer to sort of foundation level, but also these are the details, or these are the names of the staff that's covered. And I know it says NGH. That is a typo from me because I did this presentation at Northampton a couple of weeks ago. So Julie is one of your F2s. Yeah, so these are your LNC reps that are foundation years, basically. There is a really, really long list of also consultants and regs as well. But these are the foundation years that you can approach at any point if you have any questions about this. Your staff that cover ULH, Jim Stringer and Helen Ratley are the joint IROs. So an IRO is an industrial relations officer. They deal with all kind of collective issues that affect doctors, so including exception reports. So if there are rota issues within a department or anything like that, they will be the ones that will negotiate on behalf of you, the members. Claire Harriman is your local employment advisor. So an employment advisor is there to handle any kind of individual cases that you may have. So whether it's to do with being overpaid or underpaid, whether it's to do with individual rota issues, whether it's to do with or your individual treatments by colleagues or by the trust. Claire Harriman is the one that represents you, and then your local membership development manager is me. So I do a lot of the engagement stuff and come in to teach you about all this sort of thing. So wherever it is that you work, you will have a collection of people that his job is literally designated to look after you within a trust. So it's good to kind of meet you in this regard, so that you put a face to a name and know the people that are on a day-to-day basis looking out for you and trying to improve things. So I can promise you that if you do raise things to the BMA, and I think that is on the next slide, if you do raise things to the BMA, it does get picked up by people who are local to you. So it's slightly changed a few months ago. You used to be able to call the BMA. Unfortunately, we don't have a phone number anymore. To raise issues with the BMA, please fill in the BMA employment advice form. If you literally Google BMA web form, it comes up. It's like the first thing you can click on, where you can itemize the issue that you are experiencing. You can attach any kind of pay slips and rotas and anything to evidence or emails, anything to evidence what's going on. If there is a department issue, or if there is an issue affecting a number of you, the more of you that do this, the better, and the more evidence we have that there is an issue affecting multiple people. So if you are in any doubt as a BMA member, you can fill in these forms as many times as you want. Please don't feel like you can't approach us for stuff. This is what happened 2 weeks ago when I met a few of you, and I get it. I understand you're incredibly busy. So sometimes you can have an issue and then you get to the end of the day, and I understand raising it with us just feels like an extra thing to do. But please do let us know, because when we do know that there is an issue, we are primed and ready to come and help fix it, and liaise with the trust to try and reverse changes for you. So please do raise it as early as you can. And like I say, as many of you as possible are entitled to do this. As long as you're a BMA member, you can do this. And the good thing about having a form rather than the phone number, we triage our queries now. So if your query is much more urgent, whether it's to do with staffing levels or anything like that, we can escalate it much more quickly, rather than it being on a first come first serve basis on who phones us. So that's it for me. My throat is going really, really dry now. Hot chocolate's not paid off for very long. If any of you's not a member, I'm pretty certain most of you will be a member already. If you're not a member and you want to join the BMA, then by all means scan the QR code. Before I hand over to Sandeep, who's got just under an hour with you guys, does any of you have any kind of immediate questions? Yeah?
How do we find out what the official minimum safe staffing is?
So
what might feel unsafe to us might not be.
Yeah, so you need to talk to the clinician in charge. They should know. But also the rota coordinators will know as well. So by all means raise it with them, and they should be able to answer pretty quickly. Yeah. If you're in doubt, yeah, there's plenty of people to ask, and they will confirm what levels you should have. Yeah. I say it will be common knowledge in the ward. So if you're not sure, there'll be plenty of people that do know. All right. So I will hand over to Sandy. I'll be here at the end anyway. So if anyone wants to come up and ask anything individually, then I'll be here once Sandeep's finished talking to you. And like I say, we have to keep you here till 2, so you've got no choice but to stay here and talk to us anyway. No, thank you for listening to me. I say we'll do the techie bit and hand over. How do we do?